hope to God that you've never heard the stories of Siyah. About a year ago, I encountered something that leaves me with a constant pressing anxiety to this day. The story is a warning to those who constantly seek the negativity in every situation, those who live in judgment, fear, and anxiety. Some call a general guiding force to be God, Allah, Buddha, or Krishna. But to every positive, there is a negative. If optimistic energy can be felt, so can the opposite. I recall the thoughts I had waking up one morning, as I wish I could just sleep forever. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go to class. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to move. For the prior few months, I felt as though I was living in a state of conscious pessimistic anxiety. I just couldn't seem to find anything to be grateful for, no matter how hard I tried. Life was a roller coaster that I no longer wish to ride. All the thoughts I had waking up one morning, as I wish I could just sleep forever. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go to class. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to move. For the prior few months, I felt as though I was living in a state of conscious pessimistic anxiety. I just couldn't seem to find anything to be grateful for, no matter how hard I tried. Life was a roller coaster that I no longer wish to ride. Looking back, the days during this period of time all seemed to blend together, but this one was different. I felt the same level of sadness and depression. There was something else gnawing at what was left of my soul. My inner sanity. It was the opposite of a gleaming beam of light bathing me. Within the confusion and questions that swirled around in my head, a dark presence felt as though it was shooting straight into my chest. A nagging feeling of primal survival followed me throughout the day. Regardless of those feelings, I knew I had to press on. Not to say that I wasn't worried, but depression was something that I've struggled with my whole life. Even though it felt like I was constantly grasping for something to pull me out, like a drowning man reaching for a savior's hand. But the hand pulled away right before I could grasp it. I would think, what did I do to deserve this suffering? The only thing that allowed me to drag one foot in front of the other, day by day, week by week, month by month, was the hope that one day I would wake up and no longer feel this way. I threw myself out of bed and proceeded with my daily activities, on top of the fact that everything I did felt like a chore. The aforementioned dark presence was with me every step of that day. In the shower, piercing me with what felt like dark glances from the drains. I knew that Anthony had noticed my apathetic tendencies increasing as the months went past. I opened the door from the bathroom, turning to my left to see that he had his door opened. When our eyes met, he looked at me with concern. It came from behind my roommate. It watched and licked its mouth as I felt worse and worse, salivated at the thought of me ending my own existence, relished in the loneliness I felt while speaking to Anthony, my best friend, whom I felt like I was light years away from, even if we were speaking. Anthony's mouth moved. His words were drowned out by cascading doubts and insecurities.
You can't do it. Just quit. Ignore his concerns. Tell him you're fine.
Although these negative thoughts have always trailed me, today they felt as though they were no longer immaterial, like a thick liquid sloshing between my ears. I asked Anthony to repeat himself. He sighed and said, "You don't look good, man. Maybe you should call off work." I asked him what had tipped him off, and I remember exactly what he said. "The bags under your eyes look like you haven't slept in weeks. And not to mention, you have been so distant and off-center, it's like I'm talking to a shell." His eyes watered, his mouth contorted into a frown. "I really think you should get some help, man." Months later, after the events occurred, Anthony told me he felt as though my depression felt like it had materialized into a breathing essence. A rip in space-time, swallowing anything positive. As I left my apartment, it was pulling me from the tree line. It felt like the force of it physically vacuumed me an inch backwards. With every forward motion I took, a dark suction like a vortex of pessimism.
Stay home. Don't go. There's no point in moving forward.
As I drove to work, I felt it encouraging me to come closer, to embrace the bottomless sadness that was the end.
Pull your wheel to the right. It won't even be hard. Just end these thoughts. Death is silence. Silence is bliss.
How I managed to go to work for the next few weeks, let alone eat, sleep, or perform other basic human functions. The dark presence grew slightly stronger each day, as if a swamp of sorrows, living and breathing within my own skull wasn't bad enough. The thoughts began to take on a form of their own. I thought to myself, something is telling me these things. This isn't me. This isn't me. Instantly, doubt fell upon me. I could almost hear my thoughts, a distant whisper behind television static.
Your brain works. The only way to get these thoughts out is to stop your brain. Every synapse is another moment of misery.
It grew closer and closer. What once only haunted from short distances now followed me behind like a shadow. An atrocious entity clung to me, hanging from my back, digging its sharp, definite negativity into my brain like a sword stabbed into a rotten, fleshy mass. Sleep was the precipice. It plunged into darkness. That at least I would not wake up and remember. The somber void of ignorance. Well, what ensued one night, weeks after I began to feel the dark presence, was easily one of the most unsettling experiences that I've ever lived through. My upper body quickly rose from my comforting bed until my body formed about a 90-degree angle. My breathing was deep. Upon inhale, my chest expanded until it no longer could. My exhales were short and forceful. I wiped my sweat-covered forehead off with my blanket. I was so covered in perspiration, it felt like I had gotten out of the shower and straight into my bed without drying off. I felt a feeling of fear and confusion. I needed to touch another living person to make sure I was still alive. I barreled towards the door, but for some reason, I must have left it open. I thought to myself as I dashed down the hall towards Anthony's room. Slamming into the door, I twisted the knob and rushed into his room. I made it to his bed within one bound that I grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him awake. I didn't care how mad he was going to be because I knew he would understand. I don't know what the fuck is going on, man, but I just needed to be with another person. And then he said, whoa, man, relax, just turn on the lights. I felt a sense of relief for the first time in months. Something actually worked out the way I wanted it to. I finally wanted to be in another person's presence. As I flipped on the switch, I squinted at the influx of lights, but suddenly, I could make out an unnaturally thick stream of tar climbing up the wall from the switch. Before I could even think, I looked to my right. The tar was everywhere. Siyah, crudely smeared on the wall repeatedly in different sizes. The phrase almost covered the white wall. In the blank spots, I saw words like
quit, death, end, stop, pointless.
I gasped. I pressed my hands to my mouth, taking a step back and directing my view to the ceiling. I saw that the tar is now in the shape of hands, except it appeared as though the thumbs were on the outermost part of the hand, as though someone stepped in the stuff and crab walked across the ceiling. Time slowed as I followed the trail of footprints down across the ceiling onto Anthony's bed. My heart pounded faster as I realized the only person who has been by my side since the depression started could be in harm's way. I saw his face. He was sitting up in his bed, mouth gaping as if his jaw was unhinged. His eyes were totally blackened, as if they were stained with abyssal ink. I heard him make an unnatural, staggered inhale as he lifelessly stared at me. I was completely frozen. The unsettling groan turned into demonic rambling. His jaw or chest didn't move. As the sound continued to radiate from his mouth, I couldn't peel my eyes away from his. Thoughts started to pour into my brain as I regained control over my limbs. I began to backpedal out of the room. The light bulb in his room exploded. I felt myself fall. In the instant my head smacked off the carpet, I found myself where I was but a few months ago. In my bed, covered in sweat, sitting at a 90-degree angle. But I didn't feel any relief. I felt it inside of me. My head was the vortex of darkness. The nagging suicidal thoughts were a mass of decaying organic matter that was my brain. My pupils enlarged as they took in the light from my bedside lamp. I peered to my right. My door was swung wide open. I quickly scanned every area of my room, but everything was in its place. I looked to the doorway, and what I saw then has been internally lasered into my being. 2 elongated humanoid arms with leathery sagging skin reached from the hallway into my room. Adrenaline took over, but it was as if all of my energy was used to tunnel vision on what I was looking at. I didn't have a drop of will to move an inch. Soon the being encroached into my room head first. I could finally make out what it was. The creature would have probably been 7 feet tall if it could stand up vertically. Its body was like a male human's, but it had 4 limbs protruding from its torso. It stuck to the wall like glue, and the main joints faced me. The rest of the legs inverted back onto the wall. Its face elongated. Its tongue rolled out from its mouth down across an endless array of anglerfish-like teeth. A dark saliva dripped from its mouth, and its foot-long tongue and its black eyes stared at me as if it was straight through my soul. I could hardly make out the things breathing as thoughts began to emanate from inside of my skull out of my ears. It was as if a jumbled array of all of my depressing and negative thoughts were living inside of me, all in one instant.
Siyah Dill. 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 The phrase overpowered my thoughts.
I saw the lights in the hallway flick on, and Anthony ran towards me. He pulled me out of my bed by my arms and dragged me down the steps. We're both very skinny, and not tall either. Neither of us were built to carry one another. He continued to pull me across the kitchen floor, and finally, outside. As the cold air hit my face, I tried to stand, and now I could walk. With Anthony's assistance, we made it to his car and sped off to the hospital. After I fully regained consciousness at the hospital, I had an overwhelming sense of gratitude and happiness. The creature didn't kill me. I wasn't a lunatic, and my best friend saved my life. There was so much to be happy for. Just breathing and not being weighed down by 1,000 sandbags of pessimism was enough for me. After that, I refused to enter the apartment again. I was able to talk Anthony into moving out with me. He swore that he didn't see anything that I was describing, but admitted he heard an inhumanly loud gasping, so he rushed into my room to make sure I was alright. He said his last thought was that a monster was suctioned to my wall, making noises or causing me to blankly stare off into the distance. Anthony chalked it up to me having a nightmare-induced seizure or a meltdown. He genuinely suggested I tell the doctor and maybe spend some time in a mental ward of a hospital, but I refused. He got all of my things from the apartment as I waited in the car. I could no longer feel the creature watching me from the tree line. I didn't feel anything in my brain. The darkness could be 1,000 miles away for all I care. But who's to say what would have happened to me if Anthony wasn't there? And who's to say what will happen to those stuck in a pessimistic loop like I was those last few months?